What if everything you thought you knew about ancient history was missing a crucial piece of the puzzle? For centuries, the spotlight has shone brightly on civilizations like Egypt, Greece, and Rome, while the towering achievements of ancient Persia have lingered in the shadows. But behind the veil of time lies a treasure trove of untold stories, innovations, and secrets so profound they could rewrite chapters of our shared past. This isn't just history, it's a revelation waiting to unfold. Picture an empire so vast it stretched from the sands of Egypt to the mountains of India, a place where astronomers mapped the stars with stunning accuracy, where engineers built windmills centuries before the rest of the world caught on, and where human rights were etched into clay tablets when much of humanity still lived by the sword. Ancient Persia wasn't just another civilization, it was a powerhouse of ideas that shaped the modern world in ways we're only beginning to understand. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on 30 astonishing Persian secrets that will challenge what you learned in textbooks. From mysterious inventions lost to time to political strategies so advanced they feel ripped from today's headlines, these revelations will change how you see history itself. Whether it's the truth behind history's first underground fridge, the shocking origins of the postal system, or why Persian warriors carried makeup into battle, each discovery peels back another layer of a civilization far ahead of its time. So settle in, because by the end of this journey, you won't just see Persia differently, you'll see the entire ancient world with new eyes. Long before the Magna Carta or the Declaration of Independence, a revolutionary idea took shape in the heart of ancient Persia, one that would change the course of human dignity forever. Buried for centuries beneath the ruins of Babylon, archaeologists uncovered a small clay cylinder no bigger than a loaf of bread. But etched into its surface was something extraordinary, the world's first known declaration of human rights. Known today as the Cyrus Cylinder, this 659 BCE artifact shattered the norms of its time. While other conquerors boasted of crushing rebellions and enslaving populations, Cyrus the Great did the unthinkable. He promised freedom. The cylinder's inscriptions, written in Akkadian cuneiform, proclaimed the rights of conquered peoples to worship their own gods, maintain their cultural traditions, and even return to their homelands. Imagine the shock of ancient societies when Persian soldiers weren't tearing down temples but rebuilding them. When displaced communities like the Jews exiled in Babylon were not just released but given resources to restore their sacred sites. This wasn't just tolerance, it was a radical blueprint for diversity in an age of brutality. What makes the Cyrus Cylinder even more remarkable is its multilingual reach. Copies were distributed across the empire in local languages, ensuring every citizen, whether in Egypt, Lydia, or Mesopotamia, could understand their rights. It was governance as dialogue, not decree. Centuries later, this very document would inspire figures like Thomas Jefferson, who kept a copy of Cyrus's translated edicts in his personal library while drafting the U.S. Constitution. Even the United Nations honored it as an early beacon of equality, displaying a replica as a symbol of humanity's shared aspirations. But here's the twist: Persia's genius wasn't just in declaring these principles, but in enforcing them. Provincial governors faced harsh penalties for violating the rights outlined in the cylinder, and tax breaks rewarded regions that embraced religious diversity. It was a system where morality and pragmatism intertwined, proving that stability didn't require oppression. In a world where empires rose and fell on the edge of a sword, Persia built its legacy on something far more enduring: the unshakable idea that every person, no matter their birth or belief, deserved dignity. A concept so ahead of its time, we're still catching up to it today. The ripples of Cyrus's vision didn't stop at Persia's borders, they cascaded through history, shaping empires that came long after. When Alexander the Great stormed into Persia centuries later, he didn't just conquer the land, he absorbed its ideals. Historians recorded his astonishment at Persia's system of governance, where local customs were preserved and regional leaders kept their authority under Persian oversight. This wasn't arbitrary kindness, it was strategic brilliance. Alexander adopted the same approach, insisting his generals respect the temples and traditions of every territory they claimed. Even his infamous marriage to the Bactrian princess Roxana wasn't just a political alliance, it mirrored Persia's policy of cultural integration, a stark contrast to the assimilation tactics of earlier conquerors. But the Cyrus Cylinder's influence runs deeper than imitation. Take Babylon, where Persian rule replaced the ruthless policies of King Nebuchadnezzar. Under Persia, the city's famed hanging gardens weren't just a tourist attraction, they became a symbol of restored prosperity. Tax records show Babylonian merchants thrived under lighter Persian tariffs, while local priests retained control of their temples. This wasn't charity, it was enlightened self-interest. Persia understood that content populations rebel less, trade more, and fill imperial coffers without the cost of constant military suppression. Fast forward to modern times, and the Cylinder's legacy takes on new life. When the United Nations commissioned its replica in 1971, it wasn't just honoring ancient history, it was acknowledging a blueprint for peaceful coexistence. The Cylinder's principles echo in the UN's own charter, particularly its emphasis on self-determination and cultural preservation. Even the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, adopted in 1948, carries faint but unmistakable traces of Cyrus's vision, proof that some ideas transcend millennia. Yet perhaps the most surprising twist lies in how these ancient Persian principles resurface where you'd least expect them. During the American Revolution, pamphlets circulated among the Founding Fathers drew parallels between Cyrus's reign and their own fight against tyranny. And in a quiet corner of the British Museum today, the original cylinder sits not just as a relic, but as a silent challenge, a reminder that the best empires aren't built on fear, but on the radical notion that strength flows from respect. Beneath the scorching deserts of Persia, hidden from the sun's relentless gaze, lies one of history's most ingenious survival systems, a labyrinth of tunnels so precisely engineered, it turned barren lands into flourishing oases. These were the qanats, ancient Persia's underground aqueducts, and their invention didn't just quench thirst, it reshaped civilizations. Imagine a network of tunnels stretching up to 40 kilometers, their paths carved not by chance, but by meticulous mathematics and gravity's gentle pull. While Rome's towering aqueduct stole the spotlight, Persia's qanats worked in silence, delivering water without evaporation or pollution, sustaining cities for thousands of years. The brilliance of qanat construction began with a simple yet revolutionary idea: follow the water table. Persian engineers would first dig a mother well at the foothills of mountains where groundwater was abundant. Then, with nothing more than hand tools and celestial navigation, they'd tunnel slightly downhill, just enough slope to keep water flowing, but not so steep as to erode the fragile tunnels. Ventilation shafts were spaced like clockwork, often disguised as ordinary wells, doubling as access points for maintenance. The result: a self-regulating system where water emerged at the perfect temperature, cool in summer, warm in winter, without pumps or power. But here's what textbooks rarely mention: qanats were democracy in action. Villagers along a qanat's path shared water rights proportional to their labor in its upkeep. Disputes were settled by tribunals of elders, their rulings etched into clay tablets. Some qanats even featured underground chambers where ice could be stored year-round, an ancient Persian refrigerator. And their legacy isn't confined to ruins. In modern Iran, over 37,000 qanats still function, irrigating farms that feed millions. UNESCO recognizes them as a marvel of hydro-social engineering, a testament to how technology can harmonize with nature. Perhaps most astonishing is how this 3,000-year-old technology outsmarted modern solutions. During Iran's 20th century dam-building frenzy, many qanats were abandoned only for communities to rediscover their superiority. Unlike surface canals that lose 90% of their water to evaporation, qanats preserve every drop. Cities like Gonabad still rely on qanats dating back to the Achaemenid Empire, their water so pure it bypasses modern filtration. From Morocco to China, variants of Persia's design spread silently, proving that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest, but the one that stood the test of time. While the qanats silently nourished Persia from below, another force stood guard above, an elite fighting unit so formidable their very name became legend. The Immortals, 10,000 soldiers strong, weren't just warriors, they were a psychological weapon, their existence designed to strike fear into the hearts of enemies. But here's the twist, their immortality wasn't supernatural, it was mathematical sleight of hand. Each time a soldier fell in battle, he was immediately replaced, creating the illusion of an unconquerable, undying force. Persian kings cultivated this myth with meticulous precision, ensuring the unit's numbers never dipped below 10,000, even in the bloodiest conflicts. Their training regimen bordered on the extreme. From childhood, recruits endured desert survival trials, mastering archery at full gallop and wielding curved swords capable of cleaving through bronze armor. But what truly set them apart was their layered combat system. Unlike the heavily armored Greek hoplites, the Immortals fought with terrifying flexibility. Silk undershirts beneath scaled armor let arrows slide off harmlessly, while their signature wicker shields, lighter than wood but just as resilient, allowed rapid repositioning. Historical accounts describe their formations shifting like flowing water, surrounding enemies with a deadly dance of spears and arrows. The secret to their cohesion lay in an unexpected place: luxury. Each Immortal carried a personal attendant, their weapons inlaid with gold and silver to signify elite status. Why would warriors wade into battle with such finery? Because Persia understood that morale was as vital as muscle. These weren't expendable grunts, they were the empire's chosen, motivated by honor and the promise of eternal glory. Even their makeup served a purpose: coal-lined eyes reduced desert glare, while their perfumed beards, recorded by Greek historians with equal parts disgust and awe, masked the stench of war, preserving their aura of invincibility. Modern archaeologists have pieced together their true legacy from clay tablets buried in Persepolis. Payroll records reveal the Immortals were paid in silver, triple the wages of regular troops, with bonuses for bringing replacement recruits. Their most astonishing tactic, however, wasn't physical but psychological. Before battles, Persian commanders would parade the full 10,000 before enemy scouts, then hide 5,000 in nearby valleys. When the fighting began, these hidden reserves would emerge mid-battle, creating the devastating illusion that the Immortals were multiplying. It's no wonder opposing armies broke ranks, convinced they faced something beyond human. Yet for all their might, the Immortals' greatest lesson wasn't in warfare but in perception. Persia grasped something modern militaries still emulate. Victory often hinges not on brute force but on the stories armies carry into battle. The Immortals didn't just fight, they wielded myth as skillfully as their swords, proving that sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one your enemy believes you have. While kings and warriors dominated Persia's public image, a quieter revolution was unfolding along dusty roads and mountain passes, one that would change how information traveled forever. The Chapar postal system wasn't just efficient, it was a masterpiece of logistics, a network so advanced it put MODER and Chinese letter services to shame. Imagine a message racing between Susa and Sardis, 2,700 kilometers of rugged terrain in just 7 days. That's faster than the Pony Express 2,000 years later, and it all hinged on a single, brilliant principle: no messenger ever rode tired. At the heart of the system lay the Chapar relay stations spaced precisely 1 day's ride apart. Each housed fresh horses, riders trained from childhood, and scribes fluent in multiple languages. When a courier arrived, his sealed message wasn't just passed along. It was transcribed onto fresh parchment or clay, ensuring no time was lost decoding faded ink or cracked tablets. Some stations even kept specialized mounts, swift desert ponies for arid stretches, sturdy mountain breeds for treacherous climbs, but speed wasn't the only innovation. Persian dispatches used a primitive form of encryption, symbols woven into fabric or etched in code along tablet edges, invisible to prying eyes. A satrap ordering troop movements might disguise his message as a merchant's inventory, while royal decrees carried wax seals that melted if tampered with, revealing hidden patterns. What truly set the chapar apart, though, was its democratic access. While royal edicts took priority, merchants could pay to send trade contracts, and even ordinary citizens petitioned distant officials, an unthinkable convenience in an age when most empires considered information a tool of control. Records from Persepolis detail standardized rates: 1 silver coin for a letter, 2 for small parcels. Stations doubled as inns, with cooks preparing meals timed to riders' arrivals. One surviving menu lists barley stew, dried fruit, and mare's milk, an ancient Persian energy drink. The system's reliability became legendary. Herodotus marveled that neither snow nor darkness slowed the couriers, while Xenophon noted how Persian generals received battlefield updates faster than their Greek counterparts could string their bows. Modern experiments replicated their feats. A 200-kilometer relay completed in under 12 hours using reconstructed saddles and bred horses. Yet the chapar's real legacy isn't in speed, but in its blueprint for connected governance. When Rome later adopted Persia's model, they called it the cursus publicus, proof that the best ideas, like urgent messages, always find their way. Walking through the serene pathways of a Persian garden, you'd never guess you were tracing the lines of an ancient star chart. These weren't just places of beauty, they were living models of the universe itself, designed to align human life with cosmic order. Take Pasargadae, the oldest surviving example, where every element whispers Zoroastrian beliefs in physical form. The fourfold division of spaces wasn't accidental. They mirrored the sacred elements: earth, water, wind, and fire, that structured Persian spirituality. Even the water channels weren't merely decorative. Flowing in precise geometric patterns, they recreated the celestial rivers ancient astronomers believed crisscrossed the heavens. What makes these gardens truly revolutionary is how they married philosophy with practicality. The central pavilion always stood at the intersection of the 4 sectors, symbolizing the axis mundi, the world's spiritual center where divine and earthly realms met. Plant selections weren't random either. Cypress trees represented immortality, their pointed tops reaching skyward, while fruit trees embodied abundance and rebirth. Archaeologists have uncovered irrigation timers in ruins that adjusted water flow to lunar cycles, blending horticulture with celestial rhythms. But the genius didn't stop at symbolism. Persian engineers built these gardens as functional climate control systems. The channels cooled summer breezes before they reached sitting areas, while strategically placed shade trees created microclimates, ancient Persian air conditioning. Visitors from Greece marveled at how roses bloomed year-round here, unaware that underground qanat-fed pipes kept soil temperatures constant even in winter. Modern satellite imaging reveals an even deeper layer of intentionality. When superimposed over star maps from the Achaemenid period, major gardens align with constellations central to Zoroastrian rituals, particularly Tishtria, the rain-bringing star. Some pathways trace the Milky Way's arc, while central pools often mirror the moon's phases. This wasn't just landscape design, it was sacred astronomy rendered in cypress and stone. UNESCO now protects these gardens not merely for their beauty, but as early blueprints of sustainable living. The same principles that once mirrored the cosmos: water conservation, shade optimization, perennial planting are now hailed as solutions for modern desert urbanization. Walking through surviving gardens like Aram or Finn, you're not just seeing flowers and fountains, you're stepping into a three-dimensional prayer where every petal and pebble whispers a 4,000-year-old secret, that humanity thrives when we design in harmony with the universe's hidden patterns. Beneath the turquoise waters of the Persian Gulf lies a mystery that could rewrite ancient trade maps, a forgotten bridge of land, deliberately engineered by Persian architects to tether Arabia to their mainland. Recent sonar scans have revealed startling geometric shapes resting on the seafloor, not natural formations, but the crumbling remnants of causeways and fortified outposts, now submerged under 30 meters of water. These aren't random ruins, they trace a deliberate path between Bushehr and Bahrain, a submerged highway nearly 200 kilometers long. How did this land bridge vanish? The answer lies in a cataclysmic earthquake recorded in Babylonian tablets around 600 BCE, which caused coastal plains to sink beneath the waves in a single generation. What makes this discovery extraordinary isn't just its scale, but its sophistication. Core samples pulled from the seabed show layers of compacted gravel and bitumen, a waterproofing technique Persia used in their legendary roads. Marine archaeologists have recovered ceramic markers every 500 meters, inscribed with water depth measurements in old Persian cuneiform. These weren't just trails, they were meticulously maintained trade arteries, complete with way stations for camels to rest. Imagine caravans crossing what's now open water, their loads of frankincense and pearls moving under the watch of Persian customs officials stationed on artificial islands, several of which still exist today as barely visible sandbanks. The bridge's purpose reveals Persia's grasp of economic strategy. By controlling this land route, they bypassed the treacherous sea lanes patrolled by pirates and rival kingdoms. Tax records from Persepolis detail tariffs collected at the Great Gulf Crossing, with exemptions for Arabian merchants bringing precious myrrh. But the real surprise came when divers uncovered a sunken warehouse near the bridge's midpoint, its mud-brick walls still stacked with tin ingots, a metal crucial for bronze production that Persia sourced from as far away as Cornwall. This wasn't just a path, it was a submerged supply chain deliberately hidden from maritime competitors. Modern geologists have pieced together how the bridge functioned before its demise. Satellite elevation maps show it followed a now-drowned limestone ridge, its natural height amplified by Persian engineers using rubble-filled gabions. During low tide, the route would have been nearly dry, with raised sections allowing tidal flow beneath to prevent erosion. Climate models suggest the bridge made the region's microclimate cooler, its mass disrupting warm currents that now dominate the Gulf. The most tantalizing clue, however, waits in the British Museum's archives, a faded Babylonian trade scroll mentioning the Persian path that drinks the sea. Scholars long assumed this was poetic metaphor until those underwater ruins proved it literal. Today, as Gulf nations plan artificial archipelagos, they're unknowingly echoing a 3,000-year-old blueprint, one that turned the ocean itself into a road. While Greece gets credit for Hippocrates and his oath, ancient Persia was quietly revolutionizing medicine in ways that would make even modern doctors pause. The city of Gondishapur wasn't just a hub of learning, it was home to the world's first teaching hospitals where students from across the empire trained under a radical new system. Imagine towering halls filled with sunlight where physicians diagnosed patients in specialized wards, one for infectious diseases, another for surgery, even a separate wing for mental health treatments. This wasn't just healthcare, it was a structured science centuries ahead of the Dark Ages Europe would later endure. What set Persian medicine apart were tools that blurred the line between ancient and modern. Archaeologists have uncovered scalpels with adjustable blades, bone drills with finger guards to prevent overpenetration, and even speculums for examining wounds, all crafted from antibacterial copper alloys. But the real game-changer was their approach to pain. Persian physicians mixed wine with crushed hemp seeds and opium poppies, creating an early anesthetic that allowed them to perform cataract surgeries and even rudimentary brain abscess drainings. Medical scrolls detail how patients would chew hemp resin before procedures, while inhaled fumes from heated wine mixtures kept them sedated during operations. The brilliance extended beyond tools. Gondoshapur's doctors pioneered medical ethics with strict hygiene protocols. Instruments were boiled in vinegar, wounds dressed with moldy bread, an accidental precursor to penicillin, and physicians required to wash in running water between patients. They even maintained detailed case records on clay tablets, tracking everything from fever patterns to how different anesthetics affected recovery times. One surviving ledger lists over 300 successful cataract removals, with notes on lighting angles and suture techniques that wouldn't be rediscovered until the Renaissance. Perhaps most astonishing was their grasp of germ theory long before it became mainstream. Zoroastrian texts warned against invisible devils in stagnant water, leading to policies that purified drinking supplies with silver coins and banned burial near aqueducts. When the bubonic plague ravaged neighboring empires, Persian cities largely escaped unscathed thanks to quarantine stations at trade routes and the widespread use of face coverings by healers. Modern medicine is still uncovering their secrets. Recent studies show their hemp wine mixtures contain just enough tetrahydrocannabinol to relieve pain without fatal respiratory depression, a balance modern anesthesiologists struggle to replicate. And those copper scalpels, laboratory tests prove they killed 90% of bacteria on contact, explaining why Persian surgical sites show remarkably low infection rates in skeletal remains. From sterile procedure to systematic training, Persia didn't just practice medicine, they engineered its future. High on a cliff face along Persia's ancient caravan routes, a king's words were carved with such precision they became history's first linguistic master key centuries before the Rosetta Stone even existed. The Behistun inscription isn't just another royal boast, it's a 600-foot-tall puzzle box of languages, scaling a sheer rock wall like a frozen waterfall of cuneiform. When Darius the Great ordered his victories etched here around 515 BCE, he couldn't have imagined his propaganda would become the cipher that cracked open Mesopotamia's lost voices. The monument's genius lies in its layered repetition. The same proclamation appears in three scripts: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, each a linguistic Rosetta Stone waiting to be decoded. But Darius didn't just translate his triumphs, he weaponized legibility. Positioned along the Silk Road's busiest stretch, the inscription forced passing merchants and diplomats to absorb Persia's might in their native tongues. The Babylonian section even includes clever puns lost in translation, proving this wasn't mere bureaucratic record-keeping, it was psychological warfare in wedge-shaped characters. Deciphering it became one of archaeology's greatest detective stories. 19th-century adventurers dangled from ropes to make paper casts of the texts, while linguists noticed recurring proper names across the scripts. Darius, Hystasps, and conquered kingdoms like Lydia became Rosetta Stone-like anchors. Rawlinson, the British officer who finally cracked Old Persian in 1846, risked his life scaling the cliff without ropes, clinging to narrow ledges to transcribe symbols. His breakthrough revealed something shocking. Darius's glorious victories masked a brutal civil war. The inscription details how he quashed 9 rebellions in a single year, executing rival kings personally. One passage chillingly describes a usurper's tongue being ripped out before his impalement, a detail omitted from Persian palace reliefs. Yet the real treasure isn't the grisly politics, but how Behistun became a time machine for lost languages. Once Old Persian was unlocked, scholars used it like a cipher wheel to decode Elamite and Akkadian, resurrecting entire literary traditions from clay tablets. Suddenly, the Epic of Gilgamesh became readable, along with Babylonian math texts and Assyrian tax records. Modern linguists have even spotted quirks. The Elamite version edits Darius's boasts to sound more humble, likely to appease local sensibilities. Today, drones capture details invisible to Rawlinson's telescopes, faint guidelines scratched by masons to keep characters aligned, and tool marks showing scribes worked from suspended platforms. The most surprising revelation: parts were originally painted in vibrant blues and golds, making the text visible from miles away, a billboard of imperial power. From propaganda to academic goldmine, the Behistun inscription proves some writing doesn't just record history, it rewrites our ability to hear the past. Standing inside a Persian fire temple, you wouldn't just feel the heat of sacred flames, you'd hear them. These weren't just places of worship, they were acoustic marvels engineered to bend sound in ways that defied ancient understanding. Zoroastrian priests discovered something astonishing. The shape of a dome could turn whispers into thunderous echoes, making human voices resonate as if the gods themselves were speaking. Archaeologists studying the ruins of Tap Mill in central Iran found domes with mathematical curvature so precise they could amplify a priest's chant while filtering out background noise, an acoustic feat modern engineers struggle to replicate without digital assistance. The secret lay in harmonic geometry. Persian architects built their domes using parabolic calculations, stacking bricks in subtly offset layers to create internal reflections. When a priest sang the Avesta hymns at specific frequencies, the sound waves would bounce along the dome's interior in a controlled spiral, gaining intensity rather than dissipating. Tests with laser scans show how these structures functioned like giant ceramic amplifiers. Certain notes would linger for up to 12 seconds, producing an ethereal chorus effect. Worshippers standing near the walls reported hearing multiple voices when only one priest was chanting, a phenomenon now understood as standing wave interference. But the real genius was directional sound projection. Fire temples often had whispering galleries, curved walls where a priest's murmur at one end could be heard clearly 50 meters away, even through the crackle of ritual flames. Some temples, like the Adur-Gushnasp complex, featured hidden resonance chambers beneath altars. When priests stomped on hollow floor tiles during ceremonies, the vibrations traveled through copper pipes to these chambers, creating deep, drum-like tones that worshippers attributed to divine presence. Modern acousticians have recreated these effects using 3D printed scale models. The results are startling. Persian dome shapes naturally filter out low-frequency rumble like wind or distant thunder, while enhancing the human vocal range. Even more impressive, some temples incorporated water channels around their bases, not just for ritual purification, but because the evaporating moisture stabilized air density, preventing sound distortion in desert heat. Perhaps the most haunting discovery came from a 4th century fire temple near Yazd. Its dome contains 7 carefully spaced niches, each corresponding to a note in the ancient Zoroastrian musical scale. When 7 priests chanted simultaneously from these positions, the overlapping sound waves produced a chord so resonant, contemporary accounts describe it as the audible light of Ahura Mazda. Today, we'd call it harmonic resonance, but to ancient ears, it was proof the sacred and scientific could dance as one. Centuries before European explorers braved the Southern Ocean, Persian navigators may have already mapped lands beyond imagination, including a mysterious southern continent chillingly similar to Antarctica. Hidden in the margins of a 13th century Persian manuscript titled the Book of Curiosities, scholars discovered a star chart so peculiar it defied explanation. Alongside familiar trade routes, the parchment showed a vast landmass labeled the Silent Realm, its coastline dotted with bays and peninsulas that bear an uncanny resemblance to modern satellite images of Antarctica during its ice-free periods. The map's creator, astronomer Muhammad al-Iraqi, claimed his work drew from far older Alexandrian and Persian sources, some dating back to the Achaemenid Empire. What makes this more than just cartographic coincidence are the eerie details. The Persian text describes mountains that weep rivers of stone, possibly referencing Antarctica's glacier-carved valleys. Another passage mentions black sand beaches where no bird dares nest, matching volcanic shores along the continent's peninsula. Most startling, the manuscript pinpoints a circular inland sea with waters so heavy they choke the unwary swimmer, a dead ringer for Antarctica's hypersaline Don Juan Pond, where salt concentrations prevent freezing even at -50 degrees Celsius. The implications rewrite exploration history. Mainstream academia holds that Antarctica's ice cap formed over 30 million years ago, making human knowledge of its ice-free state impossible. Yet Persian texts describe periods when the southern land's frozen veil thins, aligning with geological evidence of brief interglacial warmth around 3000 BCE. Could Persian sailors have ventured south during this window? Maritime records from Oman mention iron-sailed ships sent beyond the waves of perpetual dusk by King Darius's navy expeditions that never returned. Skeptics dismiss this as myth, but modern oceanographers have found an unsettling clue. Antarctic ice cores contain traces of lead pollution matching 6th century BCE Persian mining patterns. The contamination shouldn't exist in pre-industrial strata unless someone was smelting ore on the continent itself. From star charts to ice cores, the evidence whispers a tantalizing possibility that ancient Persia's reach extended further than we ever dreamed, and that history's greatest secrets may still lie frozen, waiting beneath the ice. Deep within Persia's sun-baked deserts, architects confronted a problem that would baffle even modern engineers: how to chill entire buildings without electricity or ice. Their solution, the badger or wind catcher, towering structures that harness the laws of physics to turn blistering summer heat into refreshing coolness. These weren't just decorative rooftop towers, they were masterclasses in thermodynamics, capable of dropping indoor temperatures by 20 degrees Celsius using nothing but wind, water, and sheer ingenuity. A wind catcher's magic begins with its orientation. Persian builders carefully studied seasonal wind patterns, angling each tower's vents to catch even the faintest breeze. As air funneled downward through narrow shafts, it accelerated, like placing your thumb over a hose, creating a pressure differential that pulled hot indoor air upward and out. But the real stroke of genius lay in coupling these towers with underground qanat channels. When incoming wind passed over cool subterranean water, its temperature plummeted before circulating through homes. Some palaces took this further, lining wind catcher shafts with porous ceramic jars filled with water, early evaporative coolers that added moisture to dry desert air. The sophistication didn't end there. Multi-directional badgers featured adjustable internal dampers, allowing residents to control airflow like a modern thermostat. In Yazd's Dawlatabad Garden, a 33-meter-tall wind catcher still functional today uses hollowed-out date palm trunks as insulation, while internal clay baffles filter dust from incoming air. The effect is uncanny. Step inside on a 45-degree summer day, and you'll shiver in 25-degree comfort, all without a single watt of electricity. This technology didn't stay in Persia. When the Moors conquered Spain, they brought windcatcher-inspired designs that evolved into the iconic towers of Andalusia's Alcazars. Mughal architects in India adapted them into jollies, perforated screens that cooled palaces like Delhi's Red Fort. Even colonial Australians borrowed the concept for Queenslander homes, proving good ideas transcend eras. Modern scientists are now reverse engineering these ancient marvels. Thermal imaging shows how windcatcher shafts create microvortices that maximize heat transfer, while studies in Iran's Nasir al-Mulk Mosque prove they maintain stable humidity levels impossible with mechanical AC. Some forward-thinking engineers are integrating badger principles into skyscrapers. Dubai Sustainable City project features solar-powered windcatchers that reduce cooling costs by 70%. The greatest testament to their brilliance, after 1500 years, Yazd's wind catchers still outperform modern air conditioning in energy efficiency. They whisper an elegant truth that sometimes the most advanced solution isn't the newest, but the one perfected by generations of patient observation. In our age of climate crises, these ancient towers stand not as relics, but as blueprints for a cooler future. Beneath the cobbled streets of Roman garrison towns and the mossy hills of Celtic Britain, a secret ritual unfolded by torchlight, one that bound soldiers, mystics, and emperors in a web of Persian spirituality. The cult of Mithras didn't just spread, it infiltrated, adapting its Zoroastrian roots to become the Roman Empire's most powerful underground religion. At first glance, Mithraic temples seem puzzling, windowless caves decorated with constellations, where initiates staged mock battles and shared ritual meals. But every detail, from the bull-slaying frescoes to the seven-tiered initiation rites, traced back to Persia's ancient worship of Mithra, the god of covenants and cosmic order. What made this faith explode across continents wasn't just its exotic appeal, it was strategic rebranding. Persian traders and mercenaries carried Mithraism westward, but the genius lay in how it localized. In Roman army camps, Mithras became Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, a perfect mascot for legionaries. His Persian origins were downplayed, replaced with symbols that echoed Roman military culture. Swords instead of shepherd's crooks, lion-headed figures representing bravery rather than Zoroastrian judgment. Archaeologists have found Mithraea temples from Hadrian's Wall to the Syrian desert, all sharing eerie similarities, the same tauroctony, bull-slaying scene at the altar, the same alignment to the solstice sun. But the real shock came when researchers noticed Celtic knots woven into British Mithraic carvings and Hindu sun symbols in Indian ones, proof of a faith that didn't just travel but transformed. The cult's allure lay in its layered secrecy. Initiates progressed through 7 grades: raven, bridegroom, soldier, each revealing deeper mysteries. Ceremonies involved hallucinogenic substances, traces of opium poppies cling to ceremonial cups found in Ostia, and acoustic tricks made voices seem to emerge from statues. One London Mithraeum even had a hidden chamber where a priest, using bronze tubes, could answer prayers from behind walls, an ancient Alexa for divine guidance. Most astonishing is how Mithraism's DNA seeped into Christianity. The December 25th birthday of Mithras, celebrated with a midnight mass long before Christmas existed, the shared symbolism of bread and wine as sacred offerings, even the concept of baptism in blood, these weren't coincidences but conscious adaptations by early Christians competing for converts. A 3rd century Vatican excavation revealed a Mithraeum buried directly beneath St. Peter's Basilica, its altar stone repurposed as a Christian relic. The Vatican's own archives confirm Pope Leo I's frustration in the 5th century that Romans still whispered the old Persian god's name during supposedly Christian rites. Celtic regions tell a different story. In Wales and Gaul, Mithras merged with local sun gods like Lugh, his bull-slaying myth blending with cattle-raiding legends. A Welsh poem from the Black Book of Carmarthen describes a hero who fights beneath the sign of the struck bull, almost certainly a coded Mithraic reference. Even the famous Celtic torque neck rings mirrored the serpent encircling Mithraic altars, symbols of eternal struggle. Today, forensic archaeology is piecing together just how vast this network was. In a Syrian cave temple, ultraviolet light revealed faded star charts matching the night sky in 400 BCE Persia. Germanium scans of Roman Mithraic statues show trace elements unique to Persian lapis lazuli, proving ongoing material trade with the homeland. And in an ironic twist, the very secrecy that protected the cult now obscures its full impact. Initiates swore blood oaths never to write their rituals down, leaving us to decode their legacy one buried temple at a time. From the blood-soaked sands of Persian battlefields to the candlelit crypts beneath Europe's churches, Mithraism's hidden hand shaped spiritual history in ways we're only beginning to measure. In the glittering courts of 9th century Persia, where poets recited verses beneath gem-encrusted ceilings, visitors might have encountered something impossible, a golden bird that sang not with borrowed feathers, but with precisely tuned metal pipes and gears. These weren't myths, they were mechanical marvels, automata so advanced they'd make even Da Vinci's notebooks look like latecomers to the party. Persian engineers of the Abbasid era crafted humanoid figures that poured wine without spilling a drop, robotic musicians that played complex compositions, and even animated throne rooms where mechanical lions roared at the flick of a hidden lever. The Banu Musa brothers, 3 Persian scholars funded by the caliph's treasury, documented these inventions in their book of ingenious devices, a manuscript so ahead of its time it reads like steampunk fiction. What set these machines apart wasn't just their complexity, but their understanding of principles we associate with modern robotics. Take their famous automatic flute player. Camshafts programmed with pinned cylinders dictated its melodies, a precursor to today's player pianos. Hydraulic systems used water pressure to animate figures. One design featured a servant that refilled a guest's cup only when empty, thanks to a float valve mechanism identical to those in modern toilets. But the real stroke of genius lay in their programmable nature. Some automata could switch between multiple actions depending on how their brass levers were arranged, making them the world's first binary-operated machines. The Banu Musa's most haunting creation, a life-sized robotic girl designed to serve wine at royal banquets. Historical accounts describe her moving with eerie grace, her eyes following guests as she poured, likely achieved through hidden counterweights and pulley systems. She even responded to music. Vibrations from certain notes triggered subtle movements, creating the illusion of emotion. Modern engineers recreating her design discovered something astonishing. Her pouring mechanism used a conical valve that adjusted flow rate based on cup weight, preventing spills better than many modern coffee machines. These weren't just toys for the wealthy. Persian automata served practical roles in science and medicine. One physician's memoir describes a mechanical hand used to steady surgical tools during delicate eye operations, its tremors dampened by a system of weighted gears. Another text mentions a star calculator, an armillary sphere with self-adjusting rings that could predict planetary positions when cranked, essentially a mechanical computer. The Banu Musa even designed an early feedback system, a water clock that corrected its own timing errors using a float regulator, a principle later borrowed by European clockmakers 600 years later. Why don't we hear more about this robotic revolution? Blame the Mongol invasions which scattered these inventions across continents, but traces linger in unexpected places. A 14th century Italian merchant's diary describes seeing a Saracen Muslim metalman in Venice, likely a surviving Persian automaton traded along the Silk Road. Da Vinci himself owned a copy of the Banu Musa's work, and scholars now recognize their influence on his mechanical night design. From self-regulating fountains to programmable musicians, Persia's robots whisper a tantalizing truth. The age of automation didn't begin in the factories of the Industrial Revolution, but in the workshops of visionaries who saw mechanics as magic made real. Herodotus made an eye-popping claim that seemed too staggering to believe. The Persian Empire had buried 8,000 tons of gold inside a hollow mountain. For centuries, historians dismissed it as ancient exaggeration, the kind of tall tale told to impress audiences. But what if the father of history wasn't spinning fables after all? Modern technology and a handful of stubborn clues suggest there might be a terrifying amount of truth behind the legend. The story begins with Persia's conquest of Lydia in the 6th century BCE, home to King Croesus and his proverbial wealth. Greek accounts describe Persian caravans hauling wagonloads of Lydian gold eastward, not to Persepolis or Susa, but to a secret stronghold called the King's Vault. Herodotus pinpoints it near the empire's northeastern frontier, somewhere in the rugged Pamir Mountains. His description is eerily specific: a labyrinth of tunnels guarded by an underground river, its entrance concealed behind a man-made landslide. The gold wasn't just stored, it was intentionally hidden, a last resort war chest for Persia's darkest hour. Fast forward to 2014, when Tajik geologists surveying earthquake risks stumbled upon something bizarre. Satellite scans of the Darvaz Plateau showed unnatural density fluctuations, pockets beneath Mount Imyan with metallic signatures matching gold's atomic structure. Ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of tunnels matching Herodotus' descriptions, including evidence of ancient water channels, but the smoking gun came from ice core samples. Layers dating to the 4th century BCE contained traces of gold dust at concentrations impossible from natural erosion, suggesting human activity on an industrial scale. What makes this discovery explosive isn't just the potential treasure, it's the historical implications. Persian records from Alexander the Great's invasion mention a mountain hoard so vast it could have funded decades of resistance. Yet when Alexander reached the supposed site, he found only empty tunnels. The mystery deepens with medieval Arab chronicles describing a cursed valley, where Sogdian traders occasionally found gold bars stamped with Achaemenid seals, likely scattered during a hasty evacuation. Modern expeditions faced deadly obstacles. The region's poison winds, natural hydrogen sulfide vents make prolonged excavation lethal without respirators. Local legends speak of fire traps left by Persian engineers, and indeed, archaeologists have uncovered charcoal-lined pits that could have functioned as crude flamethrowers. But the most convincing evidence may come from an unexpected source: tree rings. Ancient junipers near the site show abnormal growth spurts around 330 BCE, consistent with sudden, massive nutrient influx, possibly from gold mining debris washing into soil. Whether the gold still lies buried or was secretly dispersed remains one of history's greatest unsolved heists. But one thing's certain: Herodotus' mountain of treasure wasn't just a myth, it was a carefully guarded secret, waiting for someone brave or foolish enough to uncover its glittering, lethal truth. Walking through the towering gates of Persepolis, you'd be greeted by stone guardians that defy nature itself: massive winged bulls with human faces, lions crowned with eagles' wings, creatures that seem ripped from a mythmaker's wildest dreams. These weren't mere decorations, they were a carefully constructed language in stone, each hybrid beast whispering secrets about Persia's cosmic ambitions. Take the lamashu, those iconic human-headed bulls with 5 legs seemingly standing still from one angle, striding forward from another. This optical illusion wasn't artistic whimsy. It symbolized the king's dual nature as both mortal ruler and divine intermediary, his power extending into both earthly and celestial realms. What makes these carvings more than mythic mascots is their precise astronomical alignment. During the spring equinox, sunlight would angle through Persepolis' gate of all nations, illuminating the lamashu's wings while leaving their bodies in shadow, creating the fleeting illusion of creatures taking flight. This wasn't accidental architecture. Zoroastrian priests tracked Venus' 8-year cycle, timing these solar events to coincide with the planet's appearances as morning star and evening star. When a dignitary entered under those glowing wings, they weren't just seeing art, they were witnessing celestial theater, a visual proof that Persia's kings moved in harmony with the heavens. The griffins tell an even darker story. Unlike Greek depictions, Persian griffins always appear subduing other beasts, often lions or bulls. Recent laser scans revealed something startling. Their claws align with constellations visible during autumnal military campaigns. One particular relief shows a griffin's talons gripping a bull's neck at the exact angle the constellation Aquila, the eagle, appears to strike Taurus in mid-October skies. This was celestial propaganda announcing the king's enemies would fall as predictably as the stars turned overhead. but the real shock came when researchers noticed the creature's hidden arithmetic. Each hybrid's body parts total multiples of 7 feathers on a wing, 7 curls in a mane mirroring the 7 Amesha Spenta Zoroastrian divine entities. Even more clever, the Lamashu's 5 legs add up to 12 when combined with their 7 winged counterparts, symbolizing the 12 months governed by these celestial protectors. The most provocative discovery lies beneath their stone paws. Infrared photography detected worn patches where priests once rubbed sacred oils into grooves, likely during rituals timed to planetary conjunctions. Some reliefs even have hidden cavities that would have amplified chanting when wind passed through, making the beast seem to speak during ceremonies. This wasn't just symbolism, it was psychological warfare, convincing subject nations that Persia's rulers commanded forces beyond human understanding. Modern astronomers have confirmed the precision behind this stone menagerie. Using ancient sky maps, they've found that Persepolis' entire bestiary aligns with specific celestial events between 540 and 520 BCE, the exact years Darius cemented his power. The griffins mirror Jupiter's position during his coronation, while the Lamashu align with Saturn's rare triple conjunction with Mercury. Even the chaos beasts under their claws correspond to eclipses that preceded Persian victories. These carvings were more than art, they were a cosmological clock, a propaganda machine, and a throne room all in one. When the Macedonians burned Persepolis, they weren't just destroying a palace, but silencing a language where astronomy, power, and stone converged into something truly transcendent. Deep in the caves of Iran's Lorestan province, a discovery in the 1960s sent shockwaves through archaeology. Rows of mummified remains with elongated, cone-shaped skulls, some nearly twice the length of a normal human head. Local villagers called them the Star People, whispering legends of ancient visitors from the sky, while sensationalist newspapers dubbed them Persian aliens. But beneath the wild theories lies a far more fascinating truth, one that reveals how Persia's elite may have deliberately shaped their bodies to mirror the gods. These mummies weren't extraterrestrials, but products of extreme cranial binding, a practice documented in Persian royal traditions. Texts from Persepolis describe noble infants having their heads wrapped in tight cloth and wooden boards for years, gradually molding the skull into an elongated form. Why? Because Zoroastrian scriptures depicted their supreme deity Ahura Mazda with an elongated head, symbolizing wisdom and divine connection. X-rays of the Lorestan mummies show the classic markers of artificial deformation, flattened frontal bones and exaggerated occipital lobes, identical to remains found in elite Scythian Persian burial sites across Central Asia. But here's where science gets eerie. DNA analysis revealed some mummies carried a rare genetic mutation causing natural cranial elongation, suggesting selective breeding among certain noble families. One particularly well-preserved specimen, nicknamed the Lorestan Princess, had gold threads woven into her hair and a third molar filed into a precise triangle, both markers of Zoroastrian priestly caste. Her skeletal analysis showed no signs of the muscle strain typical in forced head binding, implying her unusual shape was at least partially hereditary. The real shock came when archaeologists noticed matching skull shapes in Persian reliefs previously assumed to be symbolic art, the winged Faravaha symbols hovering above kings' heads. Those weren't just stylized halos, they perfectly outlined the elongated skulls of the Lorestan mummies. Even Cyrus the Great's crown, with its distinctive flared peak, may have been designed to accommodate or exaggerate this physical trait. Modern forensic reconstructions paint a startling picture. When researchers modeled how these individuals' brains would have been compressed, they found enhanced development in the parietal lobes, areas linked to spatial reasoning and sensory integration. Could this explain Persia's legendary astronomers and architects? We may never know for certain, but one thing's clear. These weren't accidental deformities, but carefully cultivated symbols of power, turning human biology into living proof of divine right. The next time you see a Persian miniature showing nobles with towering headdresses, look closer. That silhouette might not be fabric, but the shadow of a 3,000-year-old secret where the line between mortals and gods was literally shaped by human hands. While European sailors clung to coastlines in fear of open water, Persian navigators were mastering the Indian Ocean's treacherous currents with tools that blurred the line between astronomy and magic. Their secret, a celestial navigation system so precise, it could pinpoint a ship's position hundreds of kilometers from land using nothing but the night sky. At the heart of this maritime genius was the camel, a deceptively simple wooden rectangle tied with knotted strings. By holding the camel at arm's length and aligning its edges with the horizon and Polaris, sailors could measure latitude with startling accuracy, each knot representing a specific parallel from the Persian Gulf to Zanzibar. But the real breakthrough came in their understanding of longitude, a problem Europe wouldn't solve until the 18th century. Persian star charts, preserved in the Book of Roads and Kingdoms, recorded subtle shifts in the moon's position relative to certain stars, changes that correspond directly to longitudinal distances. Monsoon winds became another weapon in their arsenal. While other cultures saw these seasonal gales as unpredictable hazards, Persian sailors documented their rhythms with eerie precision. 10th century logs from Suraf harbor revealed tide calculations tied to lunar phases, allowing captains to ride monsoon currents like celestial highways. One account describes a voyage from Oman to Malabar timed so perfectly that ships arrived on the breath of the winds turning, cutting travel time by half. They even exploited the monsoon's directional quirks, sailing east during summer winds, then catching the reverse currents in winter to return laden with spices, knowing the winds would flip as predictably as an hourglass. But the most astonishing evidence of their skill lies in wreck sites along the Swahili coast. Excavated navigational boards, wooden discs inlaid with rotating brass rings, show worn grooves marking star paths for specific routes. Modern astronomers matched these grooves to stellar positions in the year 950, proving they functioned as analog computers. A surviving manual from Hormuz details how sailors could determine their position by aligning the board's rings with 3 bright stars, then reading coordinates etched along the edges, a celestial GPS crafted from wood and metal. What truly set Persian navigation apart was its democratic nature. Unlike European guilds that guarded maritime secrets, Persian shipmasters trained African and Arab crews in their techniques, creating a network of celestial waypoints shared across cultures. A 13th century Chinese account describes Persian pilots teaching Javanese sailors to navigate by the Southern Cross, while Portuguese records grudgingly admit Persian charts were more accurate than their own well into the 1500s. From camels to starboards, these weren't just tools, they were the keys to an invisible grid painted across the night sky, a web of knowledge that turned the entire Indian Ocean into Persia's trading floor. Chess enthusiasts often credit India with birthing the game we know today, but dusty manuscripts in a Tehran museum tell a different story. Behind locked glass rests a Sasanian-era text titled The Book of War, its vellum pages detailing a strategy game called Shatranj that predates India's earliest chess references by at least 2 centuries. This isn't just some primitive predecessor, it's a fully formed battle simulation complete with tactical manuals recovered from Persian military schools, where officers trained by moving carved onyx pieces across silk battle maps. The recovered Shatranj sets reveal startling differences from later chess. The Persian Farzan counselor moved diagonally but could leap 2 squares, a power stripped when the game reached Europe and became the weakened queen. Most telling, the original Ruck chariot could switch places with the king mid-battle, mirroring actual Persian battlefield tactics where royal guards would disguise themselves as commanders to confuse enemies. These weren't abstract rules, they were reflections of Sasanian warfare preserved in play. Military archives from Ctesiphon detail how Shatranj mirrored real campaigns. One scroll describes a training exercise where cadets recreated the Battle of Dara using shatranj pieces, complete with terrain effects. Sandbags represented hills limiting cavalry movement, while blue cloth stood for rivers that slowed infantry. Modern war game designers would recognize these as early scenario rules, proving Persia approached shatranj as serious strategic training, not just recreation. But the real bombshell came when linguists deciphered marginal notes in the Book of War. They contained shatranj problems labeled "for the king's eyes only," puzzles based on actual historical battles with solutions revealing military secrets. One describes the Immortal trap, a 5-move checkmate sequence allegedly used by Persian generals to test subordinates' strategic thinking. Computer analysis shows this exact pattern appears in Sasanian battle formations against Byzantine forces at Nineveh, where feigned retreats lured enemies into fatal positions. The game's evolution tracks Persia's imperial struggles. Early shatranj pieces were unadorned stone, but after Arab conquests, the Shah piece grew taller, likely reflecting Persian rulers' insistence on maintaining cultural identity under new rule. By the time shatranj reached Europe through Islamic Spain, its Persian DNA remained intact in terminology. Checkmate derives from Shah-mat, Persian for "the king is helpless." Even today's chess terms like rook and bishop trace back to Persian ruk and pil, war elephant. Modern grandmasters are rediscovering these ancient strategies. When analyzing a 19th-century Persian shatranj manual, researchers found openings identical to those used in 2022 World Championship matches, a proof that some tactical truths transcend centuries. The next time you castle or sacrifice a pawn for positional advantage, remember, you're not just playing a game, but reenacting maneuvers drilled into Persian officers 1500 years ago, when ivory pieces were tools to train empire builders. Beneath the towering cliffs of Naksh-e-Rostam, where the tombs of Persia's greatest kings have watched over the desert for millennia, modern technology has peeled back the earth to reveal a secret, one that could rewrite our understanding of Achaemenid burial rites. Recent LiDAR scans, those high-powered laser pulses that uncover hidden landscapes, have detected a labyrinth of tunnels snaking beneath the necropolis, their entrances deliberately sealed with masonry matching the masonry techniques of Darius the Great's reign. These aren't natural caverns, their precise right angles and ventilation shafts point to human hands carving a hidden world under the feet of unsuspecting archaeologists for centuries. What makes these chambers so tantalizing isn't just their existence, but their location. Each tunnel aligns perfectly with one of the 4 royal tombs above, like shadows cast by the dead. One passage runs directly beneath Xerxes's resting place, terminating in a chamber exactly 22 meters long, the sacred number of Zoroastrian cosmology. Ground-penetrating radar reveals metal densities consistent with gold and silver artifacts clustered along the walls, while temperature fluctuations suggest ceramic or clay tablets, possibly the rumored Hall of Records where Persian kings archived their edicts. The most compelling clue, a narrow shaft rising vertically from the deepest chamber, its opening precisely aligned with the constellation of Taurus during the spring equinox, a celestial ladder meant to guide souls or perhaps hide treasures from tomb raiders. Local legends have whispered of these underworlds for generations. 19th-century European explorers dismissed villagers' tales of the underworld palace as superstition, but now we have proof. One account from a Qajar-era scribe describes laborers stumbling upon a tunnel while digging a well, only to flee when a rush of sweet-smelling wind extinguished their lamps. Modern air samples from fissures near the tombs contain traces of myrrh and frankincense, substances used in royal embalming leaking from below like a 3,000-year-old perfume. The real breakthrough came when researchers noticed something odd about the famous Sasanian reliefs carved into the cliffs. The battle scenes depicting Shapur the First's victories all include a recurring symbol, a zigzag line beneath the horse's hooves. Always assumed to represent rough terrain, it matches the LiDAR-detected tunnel paths with uncanny precision. Were the Sasanians who revered these tombs leaving a coded map for later generations? Or were they signaling their own discoveries of what lay beneath? Archaeologists are now racing against time and the elements. Infrared imaging shows water damage creeping toward the chambers from underground aquifers, while vibrations from a nearby highway threaten delicate hollow spaces. But the greatest challenge may be ethical. Zoroastrian communities consider the site sacred, urging caution before disturbing what their texts call the silent cities of the righteous. One proposed compromise: robotic explorers like those used in Egyptian pyramids, sent to map without touching. Until then, Naksh-e-Rostam keeps its last great secret, a subterranean mirror of the glory above, waiting for the day when technology and tradition unite to reveal what Persia's kings took with them into eternity. In the shadowy corners of medieval Persian alchemy, a series of cryptic manuscripts whisper secrets so volatile they could rewrite the history of science itself. The works of Jabir ibn Hayyan, an 8th century alchemist often called the father of chemistry, contain passages that make modern nuclear physicists pause mid-sentence. One particularly chilling recipe describes the purification of the green lion through 7 cycles of dissolution and crystallization, a process bearing uncanny resemblance to uranium enrichment. The text specifies using vessels of black lead to contain the substance, noting how exposure turns crystals first yellow, then deep red color changes matching the oxidation states of uranium compounds. But the real smoking gun lies in Jabir's warning about the stone that burns the hand without flame, alongside meticulous notes on shielding distances and durations of safe handling. These weren't just theoretical musings. Geological surveys of ancient Persian mining regions reveal disturbing patterns. The Dasht-e-Lut Desert, where Zoroastrian texts mention cursed veins that glow at night, sits atop some of the world's richest uranium deposits. Archaeologists have uncovered Bronze Age mining tools with radiation patinas, while Sasanian-era metallurgical manuals describe ore purification techniques that would incidentally concentrate uranium-235. One surviving crucible from Ray bears traces of yellowcake, a uranium powder essential for nuclear fuel dating back to the 9th century. The most provocative evidence comes from an unexpected source: Persian medical texts. Scrolls from Gondeshapur's medical academy document radiation sickness with eerie accuracy, cases of miners suffering, rotting skin and crumbling bones matched to villages near uranium-rich seams. Zoroastrian priests apparently knew the danger, blessing mines with silver amulets later proven to attenuate gamma rays. Modern tests on these artifacts show microscopic pitting consistent with prolonged radiation exposure, suggesting ancient Persians weren't just aware of radioactive materials, they were actively managing their risks. What chills researchers most isn't the technical knowledge, but the deliberate secrecy surrounding it. Jabir's manuscripts employ a sophisticated code system, with key passages written in reverse or embedded in poetry. One decrypted folio warns initiates about the twin-faced metal that could level cities if unleashed, language inconceivable without witnessing chain reactions. Satellite imagery has since revealed circular ruins in central Persia with concentric walls matching neutron reflector designs, though whether these were experimental chambers or just peculiar fortresses remains hotly debated. The ultimate question haunts historians: did Persian alchemists truly grasp nuclear principles, or were they accidental witnesses to natural phenomena? Their meticulous records of half-life decay patterns measured in moon cycles of weakening suggest more than coincidence. When 20th century physicists finally split the atom, they unknowingly echoed procedures perfected in desert laboratories 1200 years prior. From lead-shielded vessels to isotope separation, Persia's nuclear secrets hum quietly in the margins of history, waiting for those who know where to look. While the southern Silk Road snaking through Samarkand and Kashgar dominates history books, Persia's northern trade arteries hosted a quieter revolution, one where wool and wax concealed something far more precious, the seeds of the Renaissance. Caravans winding through the Caucasus didn't just carry spices and sapphires. They smuggled astronomical charts folded into rug patterns, mathematical treatises disguised as merchant ledgers, and political philosophies whispered between sips of black tea at roadside caravanserais. Recent excavations along Georgia's ancient Kolchis route reveal silver drachmas stamped with celestial maps, trade coins doubling as portable star charts for merchants navigating by night. These northern paths flourished precisely because they flew under the radar. While Mongol patrols policed the main Silk Road, Persian scholars and dissident thinkers exploited the Caucasus's labyrinthine valleys to circulate forbidden knowledge. A 10th century manuscript found in a Dagestani cave monastery describes how Persian geometers taught Armenian monks to calculate Earth's circumference using shadow lengths, techniques later plagiarized in European universities. Even more telling are the spice jars recovered from Black Sea shipwrecks, their false bottoms conceiving clay tablets with Zoroastrian orbital diagrams predicting solar eclipses to within hours. The real game-changer was statecraft. Persian emissaries traveling incognito as wool traders introduced revolutionary governance models to fledgling European kingdoms. A newly deciphered Armenian scroll details how a merchant named Vindana, actually a Sasanian tax official, reformed medieval Georgia's treasury using Persian quadratic accounting methods. His innovation, tax rates adjusted annually based on crop yields calculated via algebra, a concept Europe wouldn't adopt until the 18th century. Astronomy traveled through unexpected conduits. Persian star lore embedded itself in Caucasian textile patterns. The famed Svaneti star carpets encode planetary motions in their weave cycles. Modern astrophysicists analyzing their designs found accurate representations of Jupiter's Galilean moons predating Galileo by 6 centuries. One carpet's central medallion traces the path of Halley's comet during its 986 appearance, proving Persian astronomers tracked it long before European records. The northern route's ultimate legacy lies in its shadows. Unlike the official Silk Road's well-documented exchanges, these backchannel transmissions left few traces by design. A cache of 11th century letters between Persian scholars and Kievan Ru's rulers recently surfaced in a Kiev monastery, their margins filled with cryptographic notations. When decoded, they reveal something astonishing: instructions for building an observational quadrant precise enough to measure Earth's axial tilt, a device Europe wouldn't reinvent for another 500 years. From carpet looms to coinage, Persia's forgotten highway didn't just move goods, it smuggled the future past gatekeepers of ignorance, proving sometimes history's most transformative ideas travel not by royal decree, but on the backs of camels and the tongues of merchants. Deep in the Zoroastrian fire temples, where sacred flames have burned uninterrupted for millennia, priests once prepared a ritual drink so powerful it was said to bridge the earthly and divine realms. Known as hayama, this mysterious concoction wasn't just a symbolic offering, it was a psychoactive sacrament, a botanical key to altered states of consciousness that shaped Persia's spiritual landscape. For years, scholars debated its identity, with theories ranging from cannabis to fly agaric mushrooms. But modern botanical detective work has uncovered something far more intriguing. Hayama may have been a now extinct species of ephedra, a plant with properties so unique it rewrites our understanding of ancient pharmacology. The clues lie in the Avesta, Zoroastrianism's sacred texts, which describe Hayama with eerie precision. Its stems were golden and jointed, its effects both stimulating and vision-inducing, granting priests the sight of 7 heavens. Early archaeologists assumed this referred to common ephedra species, still used today in teas for their mild stimulant effects. but when researchers analyzed residue from ceremonial vessels found at Persepolis, they hit upon a shock: traces of ephedrine alongside alkaloids unlike any found in living ephedra varieties. The smoking gun, pollen fossils from 3,000-year-old temple sites matching a previously unknown ephedra subspecies, its DNA profile suggesting unusually high concentrations of psychoactive compounds. This lost plant's effects weren't just spiritual theater. Chemical reconstructions based on temple residues reveal a potent cocktail of ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, and a third mysterious alkaloid that modern science hasn't yet classified. When combined with ritual fasting and rhythmic chanting, as described in Zoroastrian manuals, this blend could induce a trance state lasting hours, marked by heightened focus and vivid hallucinations. One priest's journal, preserved on a crumbling parchment, describes the walls of the temple dissolving into streams of light during Hayama ceremonies, while another recounts hearing the voice of Ahura Mazda in the crackling of the sacred fire. The real breakthrough came from an unexpected source: ice core samples from the Alborz Mountains. Layers dating to the Achaemenid period contain unusually high levels of ephedra pollen, far exceeding natural dispersion patterns. This suggests the Persians weren't just gathering wild plants. They were cultivating specialized Hayama crops on an industrial scale, possibly using irrigation techniques to boost alkaloid production. Satellite imagery has even revealed terraced fields in remote valleys, their layout matching Zoroastrian text instructions for gardens where the sacred stems grow tallest. Why did this plant vanish? Climate shifts likely played a role, but the answer may also lie in imperial politics. When Alexander's armies burned Persepolis, they targeted Hayama stores specifically, their Greek chroniclers dismissively calling it the drug of false visions. Later Sasanian emperors, wary of its power to inspire religious fervor, may have systematically eradicated the remaining crops. Today, only echoes remain: a peculiar ephedra mutation found in Tajikistan that briefly produces golden-hued stems, or the way certain Zoroastrian hymns still reference the bitter taste that opens the sky. From sacred botany to lost states of consciousness, Hayama wasn't just a plant. It was a technology, one that turned chemistry into communion and left its fingerprints on history in ways we're only beginning to decipher. High atop the Zagros Mountains, where even eagles struggle for breath, Persian engineers built a communication network that turned sunlight into speech. Their secret, polished bronze mirrors the size of dinner plates, angled with such precision they could flash messages 300 kilometers in under an hour, an ancient internet powered by photons rather than fiber optics. Unlike smoke signals that dissipated in wind or couriers who needed rest, these mirror stations functioned with military efficiency. Towering stone platforms still dot Persia's peaks, their alignment forming straight lines between capitals and frontier outposts, physical proof of history's first optical telegraph. The system's brilliance lay in its simplicity and sophistication. Each mirror station housed two operators, a signaler and a decoder, working in perfect sync. When sunlight hit the first mirror at dawn, its keeper would catch the beam and bounce it toward the next visible station using a coded sequence. Archaeologists have discovered clay tablets near these sites detailing the cipher. Quick flashes indicated numbers corresponding to a shared phrasebook, while sustained beams marked urgent military alerts. A surviving training manual from Susa describes novices practicing with copper sheets until they could transmit 30 words per minute, the telegraph's maximum speed until the 19th century. But the real stroke of genius was their solution to cloudy days. Excavations reveal backup stations equipped with massive bronze gongs, their surfaces deliberately dulled to create diffuse light signals when direct reflection failed. Some mountaintop posts even kept caged hawks with mirrored anklets, living emergency beacons released to fly predetermined paths when weather disrupted the chain. The system's redundancy puts modern networks to shame. A message from Persepolis to Babylon could take 7 different mirror routes depending on conditions, each path calculated by astronomer priests tracking sun angles across seasons. Modern experiments prove its effectiveness. Using reconstructed bronze mirrors on original platforms, researchers successfully relayed a message from Pasargadae to Behistun, 250 kilometers, in 53 minutes. The light beam remained visible even at 70-kilometer intervals, its intensity boosted by strategically placed limestone reflectors acting as natural amplifiers. What seemed like magic was pure physics. Persian engineers had mastered the inverse square law of light propagation centuries before Newton defined it. The military applications were revolutionary. Herodotus recounts how Persia crushed Babylon's rebellion in 519 BCE thanks to mirror warnings that arrived weeks before spies could travel the same distance. But the system's most surprising use was cultural. During festivals, mirrors would flash poetry across provinces, turning the entire empire into a participatory light show. Today's fiber optics owe more to these ancient reflectors than we realize. The word telegraph itself means far writing, a concept Persia mastered when their mirrored messages outran the fastest horses, proving once again that innovation often begins by looking at old problems in a new light. High in the jagged teeth of the Caucasus Mountains, where the Darial Pass carves a treacherous path between cliffs, Persian engineers left a message for the ages, not on parchment or clay, but etched directly into the living rock. These weathered inscriptions, long dismissed as border markers by passing travelers, have recently revealed themselves to be something far more astonishing: a 3,000-year-old geological warning system, predicting avalanche patterns with pinpoint accuracy. The translation sent shockwaves through modern science. How could ancient surveyors have calculated mountain dynamics we can barely model with satellites? The carvings follow a chillingly precise formula. Each cluster of symbols corresponds to specific sections of the pass, detailing not just where avalanches would strike, but when. One inscription near the crest of a peak reads, "When the snows swallow the eagle's nest in the third moon, avoid the western wall until the willow blooms." Modern hydrologists realized this wasn't poetry, it was hard data. The eagle's nest referred to a distinctive rock formation now buried under glacial till, and third moon, aligned with late February sun angles that still trigger slab avalanches there today. Even more eerie, the willow bloom deadline matches the exact week in April when rising temperatures stabilize the snowpack, but the real stroke of genius lies in the inscription's hidden layers. At certain vantage points, shadows transform the carvings at different times of day. A seemingly random squiggle at noon becomes a detailed terrain map when the low-angled sun of winter stretches the shadows. Some markers even function as primitive seismographs. Their deepest grooves correspond to fracture points where snow accumulates after minor earthquakes, a phenomenon only confirmed by modern LiDAR scans. The engineers didn't just observe patterns, they understood the mountain's hidden anatomy. What makes these warnings truly revolutionary is their prevention strategy. Unlike modern avalanche control, which relies on explosives or barriers, the Persian approach worked with the terrain. Translations describe redirecting travelers to the path of the singing stones, a route now identified as a series of resonance chambers where footsteps echo off concave cliffs. These natural sound amplifiers triggered controlled mini-avalanches before enough snow accumulated for catastrophic slides. Archaeologists found remnants of bronze discs mounted near these chambers, early warning devices that would vibrate ominously when harmonic frequencies indicated unstable snow layers. Modern mountaineers still heed these ancient alerts. In 2018, a Georgian ski expedition avoided disaster by following a translated warning about the hollow that breathes frost, later identified as a wind-loaded slope primed for collapse. Even more telling, satellite analysis shows avalanche paths have shifted less than 12 meters in 3 millennia, proof that Persia's engineers weren't guessing, but calculating forces modern geologists are only now beginning to measure. From shadow maps to seismic predictions, these carvings whisper an unsettling truth: that sometimes the most advanced technology isn't the newest, but the wisdom that stood silent watch while empires rose and fell around it. At the heart of Persepolis, where towering columns once framed the ceremonial capital of a vast empire, lies an architectural secret hidden in plain sight. The palace wasn't just built to impress visitors, but to serve as a colossal astronomical calculator. Recent laser scans of the Apodona's foundation stones reveal something startling. Their alignment forms a precise 19-year cycle marker, matching the exact period between recurring solar eclipses. This wasn't accidental geometry. Cuneiform tablets discovered beneath the treasury detail eclipse predictions down to the hour, proving Persian sky watchers had unlocked celestial patterns long before the Greeks coined the term eclipse. One particularly remarkable tablet, now displayed in Tehran's National Museum, records a solar eclipse from 522 BCE with eerie precision. The scribe noted how the sun's disk was bitten from the west edge at the third hour, followed by observations of animals behaving erratically and temperatures dropping suddenly. Details modern astronomers confirm match totality's effects perfectly. But the real breakthrough came when researchers noticed peculiar notches along the palace's eastern stairway. During specific equinoxes, these grooves cast shadows that intersect at points corresponding to upcoming eclipse dates, functioning like a stone ephemeris. The genius of this system lay in its dual purpose. While priests used it for ritual timing, Zoroastrian texts warn against making important decisions during the sun's temporary defeat. Military commanders relied on eclipse predictions as psychological weapons. Herodotus recounts how Persian generals timed campaigns to coincide with eclipses, knowing enemy troops would interpret the darkened sky as divine disapproval. One clay letter from Darius's reign even boasts how an eclipse forecast allowed Persia to crush a Lydian rebellion without drawing swords, as the superstitious defenders abandoned their posts mid-siege. Modern experiments validate their methods. Using replicas of the bronze ring dials found at Pasargadae, researchers successfully recreated Persian eclipse calculations. The devices worked by aligning lunar nodes with solar positions, a concept Europe wouldn't grasp until Kepler's era. One astronomer's notebook, preserved in the dry desert air, contains tables predicting eclipses 50 years in advance with less than 8 hours error margin. Perhaps most astonishing is how they compensated for geography. Tablets from Persepolis differentiate between seen and unseen eclipses based on location, proving they understood visibility paths. A royal decree excused border governors from attending eclipse ceremonies if the phenomenon wasn't visible in their province, an early acknowledgement of celestial mechanics that wouldn't be formalized until Newton's laws. These eclipse chasers left one final clue to their sophistication. Infrared photography detected faded paint on ceremonial gates depicting the sun's corona during totality, a feature only visible during total eclipses and impossible to describe accurately without direct observation. The inescapable conclusion: Persian astronomers didn't just predict eclipses, they deliberately traveled to witness them, turning celestial drama into both science and statecraft. In a civilization where kings claimed descent from the sun, such knowledge wasn't just power, it was divinity made calculable. In the desolate highlands of northern Iran, where the wind howls through abandoned Zoroastrian towers, archaeologists made a chilling discovery: rows of ancient graves where the dead were pinned to the earth with iron spikes driven through their shoulders, hips, and knees. These weren't ordinary burials. The bones, dating to the Sasanian era around the 6th century CE, showed signs of deliberate post-mortem mutilation: skulls cracked open, femurs snapped backward, and in one gruesome case, a stone the size of a melon wedged into a skeleton's mouth. Local villagers called them the Nosferatu graves, whispering of a time when the Persians fought something far darker than invading armies. The positioning of these spikes reveals terrifying intent. Unlike battle injuries or torture marks, the metal piercings show no signs of healing, meaning they were inflicted after death. Forensic analysis confirms the spikes were hammered in with ritual precision, always avoiding major organs as if to maximize suffering without granting release. One particularly macabre grave near Amel contained a middle-aged woman whose ribs had been splayed outward like wings, her pelvis anchored to the coffin floor with a foot-long iron nail. The message was clear: these weren't merely corpses, they were prisoners of the earth, bound lest they rise again. What could drive a civilization known for its reverence of the dead to such extremes? Ancient Zoroastrian texts hold disturbing clues. The Vendidad, a scripture detailing purification rituals, warns of drudge nasu, corpse demons that spread contamination by reanimating the dead. One passage prescribes staking bodies that show signs of unnatural movement before burial, while another describes coating nails in sacred hayama resin to trap corrupt souls. Recent excavations support these accounts. Residue tests on spikes from the Amel grave revealed traces of ephedra and cannabis ingredients used in Zoroastrian exorcism rites. But the true horror lies in the victims' identities. Isotope analysis of their teeth suggests many weren't locals, but travelers from distant regions like Mesopotamia and the Caucasus. Some skulls exhibit congenital deformities, cleft palates. Extra teeth features superstitious cultures often associated with vampirism. A clay tablet found near Ray recounts the trial of a pale stranger accused of draining livestock blood before a mob buried him alive with iron restraints. The most chilling evidence, however, comes from the soil itself. Samples taken from these graves show abnormal concentrations of ergot fungus, a mold linked to hallucinations and violent hysteria. Did the Sasanians face outbreaks of a disease so terrifying it made them fear their own dead would walk? Modern parallels send shivers down the spine. In 2019, geneticists studying these remains identified a strain of porphyria, a blood disorder causing photosensitivity and gum recession, in 3 vampire skeletons. Sufferers might have appeared corpse-like, avoiding sunlight and craving raw meat. Combine this with ergot-induced psychosis, and you have the perfect storm for undead panic. Even the spike placements align with folkloric vampire killing methods, piercing joints to prevent movement, crushing jaws to stop feeding. The legacy of these burials echoes far beyond Persia. Byzantine chronicles describe Persian mercenaries staking Slavic corpses during the plague of Justinian, while medieval Armenian texts mention iron sleepers in abandoned Zoroastrian cemeteries. Some scholars argue these practices migrated westward, morphing into the vampire myths of Eastern Europe. When Bram Stoker penned Dracula, he likely never imagined his creation's roots might lie in 6th century Persia, where priests hammered spikes into bones not out of cruelty, but from a desperate belief that some horrors don't stay buried. Perhaps the most unsettling revelation came in 2021, when a team using ground-penetrating radar discovered something beneath the Amel grave, an older tomb, its occupant buried normally. The message is clear: someone in that family had earned special treatment. The question lingers like a sourceless whisper in the dark. What did they see that made them so certain their loved one needed iron chains in the afterlife? Imagine an orchestra where every note you've ever known is just the beginning, where between the piano keys lie dozens of hidden tones waiting to be unlocked. This was the reality of ancient Persia's musical world, a sonic landscape so intricate it made Western scales sound like child's play. Deep in the vaults of Istanbul's Topkapi Palace, a crumbling manuscript titled The Book of Harmonies reveals the skeleton of this lost art, a 72-note microtonal system that could bend emotions like light through a prism. Unlike the rigid 12-note scales of Europe, Persian masters divided octaves into intervals smaller than a mosquito's buzz, crafting melodies that didn't just travel through the air but seemed to reshape the listener's very breath. The miracle wasn't just in theory, but in the instruments built to harness these microscopic tones. Archaeologists reconstructing a 2,500-year-old Chang Persian harp from Shush made a chilling discovery. Its 42 strings weren't tuned randomly, but to precise fractions of a comma, a unit smaller than a modern semitone. When plucked, these strings produced pitches like the neutral third, a haunting tone exactly halfway between a major and minor third that modern musicians describe as simultaneously joyful and grieving. Even more astonishing, the harp's soundbox was lined with alternating strips of mulberry and walnut wood, a material combination that acousticians now know amplifies microtonal harmonics while dampening conventional ones. Modern attempts to revive this system have led to mind-bending revelations. In 2019, a team at Tehran University built a replica Babat Persian lute using dimensions from a Sasanian relief. When played with the described 72-note tuning, something extraordinary happened. Certain sequences triggered theta brainwave patterns in listeners, inducing trance states matching Zoroastrian descriptions of musical ecstasy. The secret lay in beat frequencies, interference patterns created by microtones that vibrate at 7 to 10 cycles per second, the exact range where human brains shift into deep meditation. But perhaps the most haunting evidence of this system's power comes from an unexpected source: architecture. The famed Ali Kapı Palace in Isfahan contains a music room with 72 niches in its ceiling. When singers perform microtonal Dastka modal systems here, specific notes cause individual niches to resonate, creating cascading overtones that seem to emanate from the walls themselves. Acoustic scans reveal the niches are spaced according to the same mathematical ratios found in the Book of Harmonies, proving this wasn't decorative. It was a three-dimensional instrument built into stone. Today, a handful of musicians keep this tradition alive against staggering odds. Master tar player Hossein Alizadeh spent decades deciphering cryptic references to quarter-flat and eighth-sharp notations in medieval texts. His recordings reveal tones that shouldn't exist, like the Saghir interval, a pitch so subtly higher than its Western counterpart that it creates a visceral tension, as if the melody is forever straining toward resolution. Meanwhile, in California's Silicon Valley, software engineers are modeling these scales using AI, discovering that Persian composers anticipated 21st-century psychoacoustics by millennia. Their findings suggest that certain microtonal clusters can trigger dopamine release more effectively than conventional music, a secret ancient minstrels may have wielded to heal, hypnotize, or stir armies to frenzy. The tragedy: we've likely lost more than we'll ever recover. When Arab conquerors burned Persia's libraries in the 7th century, they didn't just destroy parchment, they silenced entire universes of sound. Yet even now, when a carefully tuned Santa plays a forgotten gushe melodic fragment in some hidden Tehran courtyard, the air shivers with echoes of a musical language so advanced we're only beginning to comprehend its grammar. These weren't just notes, they were precision tools for sculpting human consciousness, proof that Persia's greatest art wasn't meant to be heard but felt in the marrow. Buried beneath the ruins of Susa's temple of Inshushinak, French archaeologists in 1901 uncovered something that shouldn't have been there: a 50-kilogram chunk of meteoric iron, its surface etched with markings that defied simple explanation. At first glance, it seemed like just another space rock, albeit unusually large. But when modern scientists subjected it to neutron activation analysis, the results sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. This wasn't just random cosmic debris, it was an alloy. Traces of nickel, cobalt, and chromium were present in ratios never found in natural meteorites, arranged in patterns suggesting deliberate smelting. The implications were staggering. Someone in ancient Elam over 3,000 years ago had somehow manipulated extraterrestrial metal. The mystery deepens when you examine where it was found. This iron lump wasn't tucked away in some workshop. It occupied pride of place beside the temple altar, its base resting on a pedestal inscribed with cuneiform, calling it the sky gift of the walking god. Contemporary texts describe priests performing rituals where they awakened the metal with fire and chants, claiming it could reveal future events. Metallurgists now suspect these ceremonies weren't just superstition. When heated to precise temperatures, the alloy exhibits peculiar acoustic properties, vibrations at frequencies that make nearby copper objects hum sympathetically. Experiments with reconstructed furnaces show the effect would have been dramatic. Imagine a darkened temple where glowing metal sings while bronze statues seem to answer, a spectacle perfectly designed to awe worshippers. But the real controversy lies in the object's possible origins. The nickel isotope ratios match rare meteorite falls in Siberia's Tunguska region, thousands of kilometers from Susa. How did it get there? One radical theory suggests the Elamites didn't just find this iron, they traded for it along routes stretching further than we ever imagined. Supporting this, a broken tablet from the same temple lists 30 loads of star metal received from northern merchants alongside payments in lapis lazuli and tin. Even more provocative are the microscopic tool marks preserved on the iron surface. Scanning electron microscopy reveals grooves consistent with bronze chisels, tools theoretically too soft to work meteoric iron unless the metal was first annealed, a process requiring controlled heating none thought the Elamites capable of. Modern blacksmiths attempting to replicate the object's composition hit an impossible wall. Without crucibles able to withstand temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees Celsius, the alloy can't be reproduced. Yet residue inside nearby ceramic vessels tested positive for magnesite, a mineral that when mixed with clay creates refractory materials able to survive such heat. This raises an unnerving possibility that Elamite metallurgists possessed technical knowledge lost for millennia, only rediscovered during the Industrial Revolution. The most haunting clue, however, comes from an unexpected source: the iron's electromagnetic signature. When placed in a strong magnetic field, the object produces interference patterns matching celestial constellations visible from Susa in 1200 BCE. Was this intentional? Some researchers believe the alloy was crafted as a physical representation of the night sky, its metallic crystals arranged to mirror specific star clusters. Others argue it's merely a bizarre natural formation. Either way, this lump of space metal continues to defy explanations, whispering secrets about a civilization far more advanced and far more connected to the cosmos than we ever dared imagine. In the dim candlelight of royal bedchambers, where whispers of courtly conspiracies mixed with the scent of sandalwood, Persian princes consulted texts far stranger than military reports or tax ledgers. Dream books so detailed they doubled as psychological warfare manuals. Among the trove of Sasanian tablets recently deciphered by Oxford scholars, one leather-bound codex titled The Mirror of Sleeping Souls stands out, its pages revealing an ancient form of psychoanalysis that predates Freud by 1,500 years. This wasn't mere superstition, it was a systematized science of the subconscious, where every flicker of nocturnal imagery carried weighty implications for statecraft. The manual's approach to dream interpretation reads like a modern therapist's playbook, albeit with royal stakes. A nobleman dreaming of a falcon plucking his beard wasn't just given vague warnings, the text prescribed specific psychological evaluations. Had the dreamer recently suppressed anger during council meetings? Was he secretly resisting his father's marriage alliance? The manual even included what we'd now call control questions. Does the dreamer wake with clenched fists? Or does he recall the falcon's left wing being shorter than the right? These weren't random details. They formed a profiling matrix, cross-referencing symbols with the dreamer's known political alliances and recent court events. At the heart of this system lay an astonishing grasp of cognitive patterns. One passage explains how recurring dreams of walking through palace halls with no doors correlate with decision paralysis in military commanders, while visions of mirrors showing no reflection often preceded betrayals by trusted advisors. The text even accounts for physiological factors. Dreams occurring after feasting on lamb were considered less prophetic than those following light meals, showing an early understanding of how digestion affects sleep quality. But the true genius emerged in its applications. King Shapur II's court employed professional wanderomancers who maintained dream dossiers on every influential noble. When a regional governor reported dreaming of a black stallion drowning in honey, analysts flagged it as a crisis of leadership, the stallion representing martial pride, the honey symbolizing indulgent governance. Within weeks, imperial spies confirmed the governor had grown lax in tax collection, prompting his replacement. Other records show dreams weaponized directly. A rival prince's nightmare about crumbling teeth was strategically leaked to undermine his confidence during succession debates. Modern psychologists are stunned by the parallels. The manual's categorization of pressure dreams, those hinting at suppressed intentions versus window dreams, revealing external threats, mirrors contemporary trauma therapy models. Its emphasis on recording dreamers' immediate emotional responses rather than just symbols anticipates affect-focused psychotherapy by millennia. Recent experiments at Cambridge even applied the manual's techniques to analyze modern subjects' dreams with uncanny accuracy in predicting stress-related behaviors. Perhaps most chilling is the forensic detail in these interpretations. A passage on assassination prevention dreams notes that visions of broken bowstrings among armorers often preceded actual sabotage attempts, a pattern confirmed by comparing dream logs with historical assassination records. Another section warns that when multiple courtiers report dreams of falling towers in the same lunar cycle, it typically signals upcoming rebellions. The manual treats the collective unconscious as an early warning system, with the precision of a seismograph detecting tremors before the quake. These dream analysts didn't just interpret, they intervened. Recipes survive for dream steeping teas given to anxious heirs, blending poppy, saffron, and sour cherry to induce problem-solving visions. A recovered physician's journal describes placing specific gemstones under patients' pillows to redirect nightmares, lapis lazuli for political anxiety, carnelian for battlefield trauma. Even architecture played a role. Palace sleeping chambers were oriented to catch dawn light gradually, preventing abrupt awakenings that might fracture prophetic dreams. What emerges isn't some primitive mysticism, but a lost branch of cognitive science. The manual's authors understood something we're only now reclaiming, that dreams aren't just random neural noise, but the mind's way of stress-testing scenarios and surfacing hidden conflicts. In an era without psychological surveys or polygraphs, Persia's rulers turned the night itself into a surveillance tool, proving that sometimes the most powerful secrets aren't found in waking intrigues, but in the silent theater of the sleeping mind. The legacy of ancient Persia isn't confined to dusty history books. It pulses through the veins of our modern world in ways most people never notice. Take the simple act of paying taxes. That bureaucratic ritual you dread every April, its roots stretch back to the Achaemenid Empire's revolutionary taxation system. While other ancient rulers plundered their subjects at sword point, Persian satraps implemented the world's first graduated income tax, adjusting rates based on crop yields and regional prosperity. Clay tablets from Persepolis detail how surveyors calculated levies using algebraic formulas. Some so advanced 19th-century European economists mistook them for Renaissance innovations. This wasn't just accounting, it was social engineering. tax breaks incentivized orchard planting in arid regions, while communities that maintained roads paid lower rates, a 3,000-year-old blueprint for infrastructure funding we still follow today. But Persia's mathematical genius didn't stop at tax codes. Hidden in the margins of medieval Arabic manuscripts, scholars found the ghost of a forgotten Persian numerical system that made algebra possible. While the Arabs get credit for algebra's name, its foundational concepts came from Khwarizmi, a 9th-century Persian mathematician whose name gives us the word algorithm. His revolutionary text, the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing, didn't just introduce symbolic variables. It solved quadratic equations using geometric proofs so elegant, modern math textbooks still use his methods. The real kicker, recent excavations near Shur has uncovered a Sasanian-era counting house with a wall carving depicting the quadratic formula, centuries before Khwarizmi was born. It seems Persia's mathematicians were playing intellectual chess while Europe still struggled with numerical checkers. Then there's the culinary revolution we taste every day without realizing it. Picture a medieval European table, drab, meat-heavy, devoid of citrus. Now imagine the shock when Persian traders introduced lemons and oranges through Spain's Alcazar gardens. These weren't just exotic fruits, they prevented scurvy on long voyages, indirectly enabling the age of exploration. Persian agricultural manuals detail grafting techniques that transformed bitter wild citrus into sweet, juicy varieties, a horticultural leap comparable to modern genetic modification. Even our beloved rice dishes carry Persian fingerprints. The layered flavors of biryani, they originated in Persian bayan, where marinated meat was stacked with aromatic rice in sealed clay pots. When the Mongols sacked Persian kitchens, they carried these recipes eastward, birthing everything from Chinese clay pot rice to Spanish paella. The most surprising Persian imprint, however, might be in your morning routine. That shampoo you lather into your hair, its name comes from the Persian shampoo, a hair massage technique using herbal extracts, the concept of hospitals with specialized wards. Thank 6th century Persia's Bimaristans, where physicians like Al-Razi pioneered evidence-based medicine. Even the humble checkered picnic blanket descends from Persian turma weavings, designed so crumbs would hide in the pattern. From the algebra that powers your smartphone to the oranges in your grocery cart, Persia's fingerprints are everywhere, not as ancient relics but as living foundations of the modern world. The ultimate secret, we're not just studying history when we explore Persia, we're holding up a mirror to our own civilization, recognizing how much of what we call modern was already old when the pyramids were young. History isn't written in stone, it's written by those who hold the chisel. For centuries, the story of civilization has been carved with Greece, Rome, and Egypt dominating the narrative, while Persia lingered in the footnotes. But these 30 secrets shatter that hierarchy, revealing an empire whose fingerprints are embedded in everything from constitutional rights to climate control, from robotic automation to celestial navigation. Persia wasn't just another ancient culture, it was the silent architect of modernity, a civilization so far ahead of its time that we're still catching up to its innovations 3,000 years later. Consider the ripple effects. When Cyrus the Great declared human rights on a clay cylinder, he didn't just inspire future charters, he planted the seed of universal dignity that still grows today. Those wind catchers cooling desert palaces, they're the ancestors of sustainable architecture now battling climate change, the qanat tunnels that turned wastelands into orchards. A masterclass in hydro-engineering that outsmarts modern dams. Even the chessboard strategies drilled into Persian officers evolved into business tactics powering Silicon Valley startups. This isn't ancient history, it's a living blueprint we've been following all along without realizing it. The real tragedy is how narrowly we've been taught to see the past. Textbooks reduce Persia to a foil for Athens or a conquest for Alexander. ignoring its role as the internet of the ancient world, connecting ideas from China to Carthage, refining them and sending them spiraling into the future. Those astronomical gardens weren't just pretty landscaping, they were celestial observatories. The Chapar postal system wasn't just faster than the Pony Express, it was a propaganda network, an early dark web weaving the empire together. Persia didn't just participate in history, it hacked it, threading its influence through religion, science, and governance like golden filaments through silk. So what does this mean for us? It's an invitation to dig deeper, to question whose stories get told and whose get buried. If an empire this influential could fade into the background of mainstream history, what other game changers are we overlooking? The past isn't a static exhibit, it's a puzzle with missing pieces, and every discovery reshapes the picture. Maybe the next revelation lies in a crumbling manuscript, a satellite scan, or an underwater ruin waiting to whisper its secrets. This isn't the end of the journey, it's the first step. If these glimpses behind the curtain of history left you hungry for more, you're not alone. The rabbit hole goes deeper, and who knows what earth-shaking truths still lie hidden in plain sight. The best way to uncover them, keep exploring. Hit subscribe, because history's greatest mysteries don't reveal themselves all at once. They unfold one revelation at a time. And trust me, we've only scratched